one, which is, I think, a really powerful question, is what seems to be hindering your success here in moving this forward?
Oh, that's a good
So
question.
it's a good one, right?
So, welcome to Unleashed Learning TV and Unleashed Learning Radio for our podcast listeners. Now, you probably don't need me telling you this, but coaching is really in the ethos today. And we did a really wonderful episode, if I might say, with Dr. Jim Knight on instructional coaching. Now, today we're focusing on coaching from a leadership perspective. So, if you're aware of coaching or you want to strengthen it for you and your team, this is really an episode for you. Now, we've got Claudia Owett, a friend and colleague. She's a director of Growth Coaching International. Her work focuses on training, consultancy, and coaching to support leadership development in the education sector. So if you're a school working to advance teaching and learning school-wide, or you're a business working to expand your team's impact, coaching can play a really powerful role. And this impact, or I should say this episode and impact, is for you. Here we go. So, Claudia, welcome to Unleashed Learning TV.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here. Look, we were talking earlier before we started, but what we do at Unleashed Learning is we embed really a transformational change model into a school or business so they can expand their impact on the lives of others. So that's really about the teaching and learning component. And coaching comes up in this work. And we invite, as you know, we interviewed Jim Knight from instructional leadership perspective of how instructional leadership works. And I really want to talk to you about coaching from the leadership perspective, because I think this episode is going to help a lot of leaders to think about what they know about coaching, how to use it, and if they're working with us, where it fits in the big picture. So thank you for being here.
It's my absolute pleasure.
So I want to jump in. Coaching is really in the ethos today.
Mm-hmm.
People who don't know what coaching is, could you help us explain what coaching is?
Yeah, well, I think one-to-one coaching it's a developmental conversation. So the focus is on supporting the other. It is learning, I guess, in nature, learning with. It's a facilitative style conversation. So you're facilitating the thinking and learning of your coachee, who would be the person you're coaching. And I think two key outcomes of coaching, to quote Sir John Whitmore, is increasing awareness and increasing responsibility. So there's a lovely synergy of learning, development, and awareness building. And in educational contexts in particular, we work with many people across many different sectors, but the one thing that remains the same is that it is a developmental conversation that really taps into unlocking people's potential.
Or unleashing, as we say, right?
Unleashing, absolutely.
Yeah,
There's a lovely synergy there. Yeah.
it's really bringing, I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm speaking to get it in my head too, is you're bringing out, you're helping facilitate the bringing out of what's possible.
Absolutely. And we're supporting people to think deeper and broader. And I think coaching actually promotes higher order thinking. And that's done in a facilitative way by the coach. And it's through the skills we have as a coach. It's the intentional listening, it's the asking of powerful questions, and it's being really present when you're working with people to be able to get a sense of what it is that they'd like to focus on, so you can support that goal striving.
Just on a side note, because Dr. Susie Green and I have talked about this all the time, I would say the science of learning, how learning sticks, is very similar to what coaches are doing. And they may not have the theoretical framework from a teaching and learning standpoint. They know it from a coach, but it's very similar about how learning sticks, what happens to make that happen. So, okay. Now I asked this question because I know you and I know you love coaching. And I really want to ask, why do you love it so much, my friend?
Well, there's lots of reasons, but I've thought about this question before, and there's two main reasons. One is there's a reciprocity in coaching that I think you don't find in a lot of conversations. And what I mean by that is, you're in service to the other when you're coaching, and you're creating more awareness for the person you're working with. They're becoming deeper thinkers. But the reciprocity is that I learn as a coach when I'm coaching someone else. I'm becoming a deeper listener. I'm asking more powerful questions. I'm noticing things more, and I'm creating awareness in myself. So there's this lovely reciprocity. And the thing I love most about coaching is that it's a service-related intervention, that I'm doing it purely to service your thinking and your development. And there's not, as a coach, I don't have an agenda going in. The agenda is what you bring, and I'm in service of you, and I'm trying to facilitate your thinking. And that's what I love about it, that there's that lovely reciprocity. Yeah.
So I'm just writing this article, and I'm writing the article about this tomato plant. Starting the article makes me think how you're facilitating the growth. You're
Uh-huh.
right the way you're doing that, and your love of, which probably connects to your values about what you want for people in the world. So another reason I wanted to have people know you from our audience. So when I want to ask this question because it comes up a lot from leaders. So they'll think about instructional leadership and instructional coaching, but then they start putting on the other hat about leadership coaching. So I wanted to know, when are coaching conversations most appropriate for leaders to facilitate or use?
Well, I would say, I'm going to be really bold and say always. So you have kind of the formal coaching where you have that one-on-one conversation. You enter into perhaps a coaching agreement or a contract. There's some boundaries around that. But then you have what we call a coaching approach, which is these in-the-moment opportunities that you can use the skills, the techniques and the theory behind coaching in every conversation you have. So you can always be an intentful listener. You can ask powerful conversations all the time. You can be solution focused all the time, because coaching is underpinned by solution focused thinking and practice. You can be forward focused, talk about what's wanted in any conversation. And you can be action and goal orientated, which is what coaching is about. But you can use this to facilitate conversations individually. You can use it in team settings. If you think about a team meeting that you're having, what's wanted, working towards something together, you can use a coaching style or a coaching approach in every conversation, I think. And we would advocate and call that a coaching approach. So still using it in a way that is agile and beneficial for the person you're working with or the team you're working with in the moment.
It makes me think, because I was just having a meeting before, and I was thinking about what we do at Unleashed Learning is we put, for both the school and the business, we put a teaching learning mission in place, and we put the structure for them to reach it. And they all do it in different kinds of ways, but that embedding process takes time. And so you're talking about keeping the focus, solution focus, moving forward. So that as they're embedding that process, because it's like building a ship and they're putting the ship, the coaches can help to keep them focused to the bigger, to the value. I'm thinking I think of knowing you for so many years, but you tap into values, you talk about strengths and hopes. And anyway, I'm thinking of all our coffees we've had and how you
we have had many of
we've had
these.
many. So I really want to ask this question. Now, we did an episode on this about the initiative, and that's where usually middle of the process, and I see this in the school space and business space, that around halfway through the initiative, the slump starts happening. And it's usually maybe some resistance. People don't see the shore yet. It's tough. We're tired. We might start losing focus. So I want to know, what kinds of coaching questions would someone consider using when the slump hits?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've thought about that. There's a few questions that I use personally. One would be, which is what we call a continuum of know-how question, which is trying to draw on a current or past knowledge. So I might ask a question, something or similar. When you've encountered something like this before, what have you tried or done? So it's obviously bringing something to their attention. So it could be that I've noticed something, I've noticed this. Is this something you're noticing in yourself? And they might say yes. When there's something like this has happened before, how have you approached this? Another question might be, What have you observed others doing in a similar situation? Because
Ooh.
sometimes it could be something like, one thing that comes up often is things that are operational or administrative, and people might have a slump, or educators rather might have a slump around, exam time or report writing time, or they just can't push a project through. So it could be, what are you noticing in yourself? What are you noticing in others? And it can be past or present. And another one, which is, I think, a really powerful question, is what seems to be hindering your success here in moving this forward?
Oh, that's a good
So
question.
it's a good one, right?
That's a
So I
good-
think it's a really reflective question, because what we're saying as a coach is, and there's no judgment here, because part of our way of being as a coach is we need to be curious and non-judgmental. And it's just, as your coach, I'm just playing back or reflecting what I'm noticing, whether it's a slump or there's a pause or they're just not making any traction. And I think some of these questions, they're just curious questions. And I think if you come from a space of curiosity as a coach or a leader, you're always going to get a better response, because I think what it does, just like your response, oh, that's a good question. And I love when I ask a question and I get that response, which means I haven't thought about this before or thought about it in this way. So that would be a couple of the questions that I might kind of throw out there.
I thank you for being so specific too about that, because I think it helps us think.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm thinking about when you say that? Again, I'm writing this article, so it's in my mind, but I'm writing about leading learning in the era of overwhelm. And those
Ah,
questions are giving people thinking time, because there's not a lot of thinking time right now in this era we're in. So anyway, those are terrific. Okay, I've
yeah, I
always wanted
couldn't
to
agree
ask.
more.
Oh, sorry.
No, I
I've
was going to say
always
I
wanted
couldn't
to
agree
ask.
more.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you. You couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's it.
Now that I've interrupted you, kind of a funny transition. Here is the question I've always wanted to ask. When you're listening as a coach, what are you listening for?
The first thing I listen for is what's wanted. What's wanted, because often people will talk a lot about what they don't want. My team is disengaged. They're not contributing in meetings, or I'm finding it really hard to move projects along. So what's wanted? An engaged team, more movement. So I'm reading a bit. So I'm listening for what's wanted. I'm also listening for strengths, values. I'm listening for insights. Those golden nuggets, those moments when you think, I'm listening for emotions. So tuning into not always what's said, sometimes what's in the background, not just the foreground. And I'm tuning into successes and solutions. They're kind of the big things. But the main one I would say is what's wanted. Because if we listen with intention and really immerse ourselves in the narrative of the person we're working with, we can learn a lot by what they're saying and by what they're not saying. So they're the things. And I think listening goes hand in hand. It's a very important skill for coaches, but it goes hand in hand with a really important skill of noticing that I think we need to really dial up as coaches. Yeah.
So my last question, then we got some rapid fire ones. I could chew on
Yep.
this all day. Like I could really
Me too.
savor this. And
Yeah.
so here's the question I want to ask is there anything you want leaders or leadership teams to know about coaching, especially if they're working to create transformational change across the team and organization? So what they really want, the folks we're working with, is they want to expand their impact. And they're trying to not just do more change, they're laying down transformational change that's going to last. So is there anything you want leaders and leadership teams to know? They're doing construction, so if you could hear some noise on the side, pardon me. What do you want them to know from a coaching perspective?
Well, I think coaching in its essence and by nature is transformational, because we're working with individuals to support current and emerging thinking. So it's almost like you're watching somebody in the moment create these light bulb moments. So for me, it's incredibly transformational. I think its focus is about supporting people move from where they are to where they want to be. So it's powerful as an conversational intervention. And I think because it's action orientated, it's not just about mulling over things and thinking about possibilities. It's actually supporting people to move from possibility to action. And I think the supportive nature of coaching is what allows movement for a lot of individuals and teams collectively. So I think it's powerful, it's transformational, and I think it really unlocks thinking for people that they probably don't do by themselves.
Well, we talk a lot about learning that's sticking, long-term learning.
Mm-hmm.
What we talk about from an unleashed learning perspective, I read about it, is that learning equals change. So you're talking about the kind of learning, the kind of thinking, the kind of self-reflection, the kind of problem posing to go forward that causes change to happen. So it goes hand in hand with what they're trying to do as a big group with individuals. So, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do some rapid fire questions.
Rapid fire. Here we go.
Like bam, bam, bam. So
yeah.
I want to know 30 seconds each. Favorite teacher?
Okay, my favorite teacher, I have to say, I can't remember her name, but my high school art teacher, because she allowed me to become a critical thinker and really focus on creative solutions.
Wow. Person who most impacted your learning history?
I want to say Anthony Grant or Tony Grant, my professor, and the late Tony Grant, who was the director of the coaching psychology unit at Sydney Uni, and that's where I did my master's many years ago, and it was pivotal in my learning about myself and coaching.
Love that.
And I would, sorry, just add to that.
Yeah.
Dr. Susie Green, who you mentioned, who's also been a mentor to me. Yeah.
Love that. Well, Susie and I are running a retreat soon. I don't know when this episode comes out, but we're running that retreat soon.
Yeah.
Of all the things you teach, and you are an educator, I think, whether you believe that or not, my friend, but some people don't identify that way, but I'm hopefully not putting words in your mouth. Of all the things you teach, what's one concept or idea you want to stick for everyone?
Listen to understand, not to respond. And I think it's kind of taking from that Stephen Covey principle of, seek first to understand before being understood. And I think with listening, that is always my intention. And I think so critical. If I listen to understand, I can respond in a way that is productive, that is useful, that supports critical thinking, and most of all, values the human that I'm having in that conversation with on the other side.
Wow. Well, may I just end with this? I've known you for a long time, and you've got powerful skills, but underneath the skills is a powerful person.
Oh.
So I just want to thank you for the powerful person who's using the powerful skills to help our world. And thank you for being on the episode.
Well, I want to thank you and, reiterate the importance of coaching and the work that you do, and the impact that it has on educators is, I think, long lasting. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Claudia. We'll see you soon.
Will do. Bye now.
So if you like this video, you should also watch this one.